Welcome to Chicago Counterpoint Television, brought to you by the Fatherhood Educational Institute. It's fantastic to be here again, another Monday evening, bringing free speech, justice, and our fight for fairness in the legal system. Fathers are parents too, and justice should not be a luxury only the rich can afford. On our last show, we received so many callers for Attorney O'Connor that we thought it'd be a good idea to have a part two to our last segment because it was a fantastic show. We couldn't get all the callers on the air. So the callers we couldn't get on the air on the last show, call in now and we will get you on the air. And remember, this is brought to you by the Fatherhood Educational Institute, and you could always take a look at the Fatherhood Educational Institute's website at fatherhood-edu.org, and it's great to be back here again. And our first caller for Chicago Counterpoint TV for Attorney Jeff Leving and Kevin O'Connor is on the air now. What can we do for you?
Well, thank you for taking my call. My question is, I have a friend who had a bad automobile accident. He had been having dizzy spells and trouble with his memory, and he wants to just have everything go through the insurance company. They've offered him some money, but they wanted to sign some forms, and I told him he should maybe contact a lawyer, and I wanted to see should he contact the lawyer first, or should he talk to the insurance company first?
Well, I'll let Attorney O'Connor answer that. Obviously, my opinion is always get a lawyer, especially in these types of cases, because most lawyers don't charge unless they win. So it doesn't cost anything unless you're successful. So why not get the best, the absolute best? Why not? But Mr. O'Connor, could you please address this caller?
Absolutely, thank you. So I've had numerous people call me to where they asked questions just like that, and some people I said, you know what, you're not that seriously injured. If the insurance company's making you a reasonable offer, it's a rare instance, you're welcome to talk about it, and I didn't charge them a fee and said, go ahead and take the money. You know, if you're not hurt and you can resolve your case, there's no reason to get a lawyer involved. But I can tell you 90% of the time, the only reason the insurance company is dealing directly with you is because they're trying to maximize their minimum recovery on your behalf. They're trying to lower what they have to pay you, because if somebody is seriously injured to where they have memory, brain injury, things of that nature, and the insurance company makes you an offer of a few $1,000s and you need a lifelong time of care, you're going to be in a lot of trouble later down the road, because once you sign your rights away, you're done forever, and that's the problem.
The insurance company or insurance companies are not in business to give away the store and give you as much money as they can give you. They're in business because they give away as little or no money as possible. I'd always talk to a lawyer, because in these cases there's no fee. And there's one case, a very significant case, where Kevin O'Connor did a fantastic job. It's unbelievable. He represented a father, a great dad, a fantastic father, whose little 8-year-old daughter was in the rear seat of her brother's car that he was driving without insurance and speeding, and was hit by a truck. It was terrible. This little girl was badly injured. Her brother was driving, no insurance, and Attorney O'Connor was representing this dad who was concerned about his daughter. Well, most lawyers would think that case was worthless because the driver had no insurance. The brother had no insurance, and he got a ticket for speeding. Well, the case settled for $4 million. So here you have a $4 million settlement, no insurance, and I'd like to show you what the vehicle looked like this little girl was in. That's the vehicle. Just terrible. It was terrible. And after the accident, I'll show you another photo. These are just horrific photos, and that is where the little girl was lying when she was rushed to the hospital. There's sort of a rectangular chalk mark. That's where the little girl was left. And she could have died. Thank God everything worked out. But these are terrible cases, and I'd like to congratulate you on that victory.
No, I appreciate that, and it was a wonderful family. I was honored to represent them. It was so important to get involved early. In that case, I had The family contacted us right away. We were able to secure the truck that was involved with this car. Yes, the brother was speeding, that was driving. He admitted to speeding over 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, but by our inspection, we were able to uncover that the truck didn't yield or coming out of a private drive, and the reason was there was a defective brake on the back of that truck, and had we not secured that vehicle quickly and found that, there would have been no recovery for this little girl who needed care.
That's why creativity and legal brilliance in analyzing these cases are critical. There's another case where a mother was pregnant, and the father, unfortunately, was incarcerated at the time, and she had a 5-week-old fetus. And because of a doctor's negligence, a doctor completely goofed up, failed to do a pregnancy test before administering certain medication, he killed the fetus. This dad lost his child. The mother lost her child. It was terrible, and neither of them could find a lawyer. No lawyer would take this case. The first lawyer said no. Second lawyer said no. The third lawyer said no. They all said the case is worthless. No lawyer will take it. No lawyer will win. There's nothing. It's garbage. It's a waste of time. O'Connor took the case, settled it, $450,000, and fought for justice, won justice, because the fetus was destroyed because of a doctor's negligence. And this woman lost her child, this father lost his child. So there are lawyers out there that are highly skilled, so you don't want to waste your time with lawyers that are dopes, that don't know the law, that won't fight for you. You want fighters, and if you want more information, you could always contact Chicago Counterpoint Television, the Fatherhood Educational Institute, right at 312-795-9060. Justice should not be a luxury only the rich can afford. And thanks again, 2 victories in a row.
Yeah,
That's what you need to do.
The interesting part about that case, and it was a real tragedy, it really was, and the doctor really screwed up by not giving a pregnancy test before administering this medication. But the real tragedy happened the second time around, where this woman and husband went for help, and 3 lawyers said, you don't have a case because the fetus isn't viable. It's only 5 weeks old. If it couldn't live, you don't have a case. And they didn't know the provision of the Wrongful Death Act in Illinois, which is a special statute. 740 ILCS 162.2 says the age or viability of the fetus is not a defense to a case like that, and most lawyers didn't even know it, and it's a shame, and it's sad, but that was a reality, and I was happy that we could find some justice for these people, because who knows how many other people were stuck with that situation and were turned away. So it was a great victory.
All right, next caller, welcome to Chicago Counterpoint Television. I'm your host, Attorney Jeffrey Leving, and we're fortunate to have my good friend here, Kevin O'Connor. What can we do for you this evening?
This is a question for both of you or either of you. How does a lawyer figure out how much to accept for a settlement if we're settling a case that involves injury?
Well, I'll let Kevin O'Connor handle that, but my opinion is the maximum he can secure for his client, not the minimum, not an average amount, but the maximum he can secure legally for his client. There are too many lawyers that will settle short. You don't want that. You want somebody who's a fierce litigator, a brilliant lawyer, because you don't want to end up a target looking for an arrow. Mr. O'Connor, please help this caller.
So what we do, and what we do in our practice, we have a contingency fee. So we recover based on how much you recover. Most lawyers, that's an incentive alone enough to say you should get the maximum amount of the value of that case. But unfortunately, it doesn't always happen that way, and that's another tragedy in our business. So if you have a lawyer that's gone through multiple trials, your own experience can tell you what the value is, because I'm used to seeing what a jury would tell you a value of a case is. That's one method. We also have verdict reporters, that we actually report our cases to a service that actually tracks what other cases are worth, and you're able to look at that as well. But there's no substitute for trying to advocate for your client push to the limits, to think outside the box, to do something creative and different in order to maximize your recovery, because every case is unique, every person is unique, and to try and cookie cutter somebody in to say your pain is equivalent to my pain, people have different tolerances for pain, they have different things that are going on in their life, different families, dynamics, that an injury can devastate one person to whereas another person who's more financially wealthy can survive and make it through it. So it really varies from case to case, and you really need to have somebody that's experienced analyzing it.
Exactly. For more information, you can always contact the Fatherhood Educational Institute, and you're looking at the website right there. Our website, it's a fantastic website, fatherhood-edu.org, or you could call 312-795-9060. 312-795-9060. Caller, you're on the air with attorneys Jeffrey Leving, Kevin O'Connor. What can we do for you?
Yes, I'm wondering what kind of special protections under law that children get relating to personal injury.
All right, Mr. O'Connor, this caller has a great question, but before you answer it, a lot of fathers call me and they think they have no rights to protect their children because of their gender. Not true. I want to make the caller clear on that and our listening audience. Mr. O'Connor, please help this caller.
Jeff, you've been a champion of fathers' rights. You've been a champion of making sure parents both have equal rights. Doesn't, as you know from some of the things you've helped promote and create, fathers, mothers, whether you're the custodial parent, non-custodial parent, you have an equal right for your child to bring a case. But the question that you're asking is, there's an even beyond that. Not just the lawyer who's representing that child, but the court, the judge, has to take a special duty on behalf of a child such that every case that's settled on behalf of a child has to be approved by a judge. As if you were a disabled person or a minor, that judge has to look out over that settlement to make sure you're protected. In addition, minors are given longer statute of limitations. So you might think, hey, my statute of limitations is a year or 2 years, but if it's a minor who's hurt, the court has extended that time because a minor may not be aware or even know of their rights, or may have parents that don't want to pursue those rights on their behalf. If you have a situation where a father and mother are separated, the father may not even know of the child being hurt if there's a certain situation that goes on or certain tragedy that goes on, or that somebody's at fault. So what you end up happening is that the father may find out 3, 4, 5 years later when his child confides in him that something happened. Well, he still has a right to bring that case as long as they haven't passed that statute of limitations from the age of majority.
Now, a 7-year-old boy wouldn't know the statute of limitations or his legal rights, but when Kevin was 7 years old, he did. He's a genius, but he's an exception to the rule. We have another caller on the line. You're on the air with attorneys Jeff Leving, Kevin O'Connor. What can we do for you?
Hi, I was just wondering if child support can ever be reduced. My brother lost his job and he is now working minimum wage, and he can't afford the payment.
Absolutely. He needs to get into court and file a pleading to reduce it. It appears that there's a substantial change in circumstances, and that's a basis to seek a reduction. If he doesn't seek a reduction and that child support is not reduced, then the current child supporter will build and get higher and higher, and there's 9% statutory interest on child support in Illinois. So he'll not only be responsible for paying child support he can't afford to pay, but he'll be stuck with 9% interest. I think that statute is terrible, and that law needs to change. He needs to get into court immediately to reduce that support order before the state's attorney's office possibly prosecutes him and tries to put him in jail for non-payment of support when he can't afford to pay it. He doesn't want to be a victim of the system. This is really, really important. I mean, fathers, unfortunately, are looked at as meal tickets. They're not looked at as parents. Margaret Mead once said fathers are biological necessities, but social accidents. Wrong. But a lot of people who are gender biased, who discriminate, who are haters actually support that notion. Some even believe it's true. So he really needs to protect his legal rights, and I suggest he call 312-795-9060. That's 312-795-9060. He should also take a look at the Fatherhood Educational Institute's website, which you can see on the air right now. On the left-hand corner, there's a picture of me and Congressman Danny K. Davis, who will be a guest on a future show here. He's confirmed. He's a great friend of mine. I look forward to his guest appearance on this show. Very, very important, and thank you for calling. Now, there's a lot of victories here that I'm very familiar with concerning Mr. O'Connor's litigation history, and the thing is, O'Connor thinks big and he dreams bigger, and that's how we all have to be. We have to think big, but dream bigger, because we can be whatever we want to be. We can be whatever we dream. Never give up hope. Once you give up hope, you become a target looking for an arrow here. And this is really, really serious. And there's one case Mr. O'Connor worked on where he represented a father, a great dad, whose child had a high fever and was left in an emergency room and ended up with seizures and brain damage. How does anybody in a hospital forget there's a young child with a fever, and they forget the child's even in the emergency room? Well, this was terrible, and the child now has brain damage. It's just horrific. How could something this devastating happen to a suffering child in this country? And there has to be accountability. When things like this happen, somebody needs to be held accountable. And on this case, I'd like to ask Kevin O'Connor, what happened? And because I'm outraged that something like this would happen to a child in this country.
This is the saddest part of what we have going on in this country. Our emergency rooms, in order to, and it's not the doctor's fault in this instance. The doctor really did everything right, but they got one emergency room doctor covering the entire call. They staff it with a number of nurses who they're trying to have take on a doctor's role. So the nurse has so many patients. She comes out to the lobby. She sees a kid who said, the mother says he has a terrible fever. He's crying like crazy. She says, give him some Motrin or Tylenol, right? Like what we would do at home. Well, if you could do that at home, why would you come to the emergency room? That's what you're there for. So they let the kid sit. Doctor, meanwhile, is back taking care of other patients. He didn't even know the boy's sitting out there with this 104, 105 fever. By the time the mother complained, she did everything right. The father complained, they both complained. They went in, they got brought back finally because they complained so hard. And the doctor said, why were you sitting out there so long? They immediately started IVs and everything else, but unfortunately this child had a seizure and was permanently brain damaged as a result of multiple seizures because he did not get in to be treated. It's a tragedy in our country. It is terrible. This is the situation because of cost-cutting measures where they're trying to overwork the doctors, underpay everybody in the staffing, and you're going to an emergency setting trying to just get help and you're not being helped. This is the situation where we try to remedy it. I've had cases where immediately following our case, there was protocols put in place by these hospitals because a child that's brain damaged or dies as a result of this negligence, if it doesn't change the process, if we don't do something as lawyers to change this crazy process, to make the change and make the companies make these changes, we're all failing our society because the next child's going to die. So that's one of the important aspects that when we do a case, we try and get these new policies, procedures in place, and it's so important to the family because they don't want it to happen to another child.
All right, next caller, welcome to the show. You're on with attorneys Jeffrey Leving and Kevin O'Connor. What can we do for you?
Yes. If a parent happens to pass away, who has the right to bring a claim if they leave minor children?
All right, Mr. O'Connor would love to answer that question. We appreciate you calling in. Very, very important question. Mr. O'Connor, could you please help this caller?
If somebody dies as a result of a wrongful death and they leave minor children who are not adult children, technically under the law, the person under the Probate Act in Illinois, the person who has the right to bring that case is the person's parents. I mean, you'd be surprised to hear that. I was actually involved in the case that helped change the law a little bit up in the appellate court here in Illinois. that law, because I had been on the side of the parents, and on the opposite side, I had at the same time in my office where I represented the parents of a decedent and I represented a minor child at the same time, both who had the opposite interest in the case. In two different cases, of course, I wouldn't have a conflict. But in that situation, the parents, it was determined by the court through the Probate Act, had the absolute right, and a minor child had no rights. It was unbelievable. So the law ended up changing. The Probate Act in Illinois changed for the first time in like 50 years. And it actually said if a minor child has a guardian appointed, which doesn't count just to be a parent, you have to be a parent and then go into court and be appointed that child's guardian. You then have the right on behalf of that child to bring that case. So it is so important if there's a case like that that you need to get representation quickly. You got to do it appropriately. You got to give the appropriate notice, because if you fail to do it, the people who run that case may have nothing to do with that child and nothing to do with the money related to that child and how they're going to be taken care of for the rest of their life.
Before we take the next caller, Kevin represented a father whose 36-week-old baby girl died due to a lack of resuscitation by a doctor. Now, is that doctor negligent or not? That little girl is dead now because of a failure of a lack of resuscitation by a doctor. So you tell me about that doctor and what you did about it.
Well, that doctor unfortunately had come out of a program that was very highly known around our state as one of the great institutions, and she hadn't done the procedure of resuscitation on the card barely at all. And she was left to her own devices in the emergency room for a very sick baby that was born, and she didn't know how to do it. She was stuck. The nurses were begging her to do it. She couldn't resuscitate or do the basic resuscitation that should have been done, and that baby ended up dying as a result of lack of oxygen. Terrible tragedy that caused a lot of changes to happen within that institution about the appropriate people on call, to have a neonatologist, somebody who's specialized to be on call, as opposed to leaving somebody to their own devices in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I was pretty upset about that case. That case settled for $1.9 million. And in my opinion, that is how changes occur in the medical field, because money causes changes, because there's accountability. You have to hit them where it hurts, because every child's life is valuable. And here, this child is now gone, and a dad lost his little girl. It's outrageous that things like this happen. But fighting for justice is the only way to really solve these issues. And I'm very proud that there are some good lawyers doing this. I know we have another caller, and if that caller is still on the line, it hasn't hung up, and I hope this caller is still on the line.
Hi.
You're on the air.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Leving. My name's Matthew, and I have a question for Mr. O'Connor, who seems to really know his information.
You got it.
His legal. Well, here's my question. My brother's son, around Christmas Eve, was in a real bad car accident. He wasn't driving, but both of the kids were drinking. And as a result, he has a shattered leg. And my brother said, I'm not going to file any lawsuit because he was drinking and it's his own fault. I mean, is that right?
No.
Does he have a case?
He absolutely has a case. If you're a passenger in Illinois, you are not at fault. I mean, what are you supposed to do? If you're drinking, you're supposed to not drive, right? There is an issue of complacency. If he knew that the driver was drinking, that can be a comparative negligence, where he could be compared and lowered his award because he knew he got in a car with somebody who had been drinking. But that, under the law, says you have to be more than 50% responsible to lose your right to recover. That is an equal sharing and a fairness under the law. So there is absolutely a right to bring that case. There's absolutely a right to go against that driver. And the law actually, if that driver was drunk and proved to be drunk and knew, and this driver and the passenger didn't know that the level of his intoxication, they may be even subject to punitive damages and to punish beyond the regular compensatory damages. Look, the insurance companies know in this situation that they're going to have to pay. So what they do is they set their reserves. They put a pot of money over on the side that says when this case is over, we're going to have to pay X amount. And you know what happens to that reserve? People would be surprised. At the end of the year, the people that don't file a claim, don't bring a claim, that reserve is used to pay bonuses out to the executives of these insurance companies that amount to millions of dollars where people did not claim their money that was rightfully theirs.
I appreciate you calling. I hope we can take the next caller, but we're almost out of time. But one thing I want to let our listening audience know, there's nothing more precious in life than the time a parent spends with their children. And no parent should lose their children because of horrific negligence, medical negligence, or other flaws in our system. And that's really, really important, because that's really the reason we're doing this second show on this topic, because parents need to protect their children, and fathers need to know they have legal rights. Their gender is not a reason why they can't protect their children. This is really, really important. And I want to let our listening audience know that they can follow FEI on Twitter at Fatherhood EDU. Fatherhood EDU. And you could also like FEI on Facebook. The Fatherhood Educational Institute has a Facebook. It's called Fatherhood Educational Institute. The show is over. Any callers need to call back next week. Kevin, it was great having you on.
Jeff, I appreciate everything you've done on behalf of fathers and for children. It's not just for fathers, but for children's rights in Illinois. And I think you've been a great inspiration to a number of lawyers who have taken on the challenges for children. And you've really made a change and a difference, which is what we hope to do. When we become lawyers, our job is to make a change in life, not just about money, or it's not just about a particular case. It's about making our lives and our world a little better. And I think you've done that, and I, on behalf of everyone, appreciate everything you've done on that front.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to seeing everybody same time, same place next week. God bless.